Welcome to the Integral Stage Sexuality Series. I'm Layman Pascal, and before I host my high-priced week-long workshop on integrative sexuality at a seaside Caribbean resort, I need to make sure I've been fully exposed to the multidimensional richness and profundity of this topic. A topic that most people find deeply physically compelling, emotionally significant, and for some people intellectually fascinating and brimming with spiritual and developmental potential. Here to share the ins and outs of their understanding is
my name is Riya Sokol, and I am an artist. I like to say that I'm an artist because I can include everything in that. I'm an artist, I'm a singer. That was my first, most important thing that I've been doing since I was 6. I was on the stage, I was traveling around the world, experiencing a lot. And at some point, I went very deeply into self-growth area and started with psychology and different aspects of that, being named and phrased as a difficult child. I started exploring myself, and that led me to spirituality, meditation, hypnosis, tantra, shamanism, different paths of Amazonian forests, plant medicines, as well as vision quest and working with nature. So in all that, I started working very deeply with my sexuality as a woman who experienced sexual abuse in the past and different forms of violence. I realized that not only the healing that is there is a profound experience, but also that this is the doorway to a huge power, mystery, and magic.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. You talk about the doorway to magic and also the healing aspect. Do you think it's the same parts of sexual practice that create both of those? Or are there different facets, different emphases that do each of those, if that makes sense?
So you're distinguishing magic with healing, yes?
Yeah, I'm asking if you distinguish it.
Okay. I wouldn't distinguish it. For me, when I'm looking at every healing that I'm going through, or people that I work with are going through healing, it's always magical. And it's in my experience, I noticed that when we are able to go through something difficult, trauma, or any other kind of struggle from the past, the magic is on the other side. The magic, and when I say the magic, I mean gift, I mean something profound that we were not even aware that we're carrying because it was covered by the trauma or by the wound. So I would definitely say that it goes
Together.
in
Yeah.
pairs, in a pair. It's a couple.
That seems appropriate. What's the most common kind of sexual trauma that you find people coming to you with?
Oh, I could write a book about it for sure. it's it's really everything. It starts from like very I would say simple, but it's not simple, like a very gentle form of abuse, like boys touching our breasts in a primary school as girls, or other way, like for boys when they were being laughed when they had erection, for example, in primary school. It all happens in our childhood, or when parents didn't allow us to touch our genitals, which is such a normal thing, and this is how the sexual repression enters to our subconscious. Well, ending with a very serious abuses like rapes, like different forms of also of dysfunctions like pedophiles or pornography addictions. So it's really it's a very wide topic, and for sure I got to the point where I'm really very compassionate, no matter what kind and what form of trauma a person is coming with, because as well as I meet victims of abuse, I also meet perpetrators, which really, when we're speaking about integral, it really completed the whole picture of the dynamic of the tragedy that is happening in these events. And it really also helped me to support people from abuse past.
What are the main differences between, let's say, a regular sexual life and a sexual life that can provide people with healing and transformation?
What's the difference? Yes, this is what is the
Yes,
yeah?
yes.
Okay, so I would start with understanding what it actually is, because when I start to speak with people about sex, about sexuality, we might be talking about different things. For sure, my biggest awe and my biggest realization that I've experienced was meeting Tantra. And although in Tantra, sexuality is just a piece, just an area, one of the areas, but it really helped me in a deeper understanding what sexuality is. And in Tantra, we embrace everything. We embrace both pleasure and the wounds, both the light and the darkness. So with practicing Tantra, the healing is happening anyway, because if we bring awareness to our lives, if we start to live consciously, then of course we will uncover our layers, and we will dig deeper and deeper into ourselves, into self-recognition, self-knowing. And there we will meet wounds, traumas, and different things. And then obviously we have tools in Tantra that are healing, but also there is a lot of beautiful sexual healers that can support in especially when it's about sexual traumas. Yes, so that would be my answer.
What does it look like to live more consciously? What does a person actually do that is bringing more consciousness to their life?
And it's a beautiful question. I can say what it is for me, and I like to use this example that it's like meeting myself as if I'm meeting my beloved. So before, and this is how I like to start with Tantra. And there are people who are coming on individual consultations or sessions to me, and they want to learn more about Tantra, and they want to come with their partner and how to convince them because they don't want, and so forth. And then it's like, actually, this is not where it starts. It starts here and now. And intimacy, which is such a basic aspect of this meeting, starts with intimacy with ourselves. And I like to use this example that I'm meeting myself, or calling, like making a phone call to, as if I was making a phone call to my beloved, but I'm actually making a phone call to myself. And this can happen with the simple things, like just starting in the morning. I don't grab my phone to ask my mom or my partner how they are. I'm asking, knock, knock, how you are, what's happening, what dreams did you have, how are you feeling, what do you have to do today, how you feel about that, how can you support yourself today, what can you do for yourself. So this starts with the simple steps, and slowing down and really giving attention to every single thing that I'm doing, whether it's eating or working or just spending time with myself, and really being in contact, basically being in contact with yourself. This would be like the simplest thing that I could say. Meditation, dancing. For me as a woman, it's especially important to meet other women also. For men, I know how important for my beloved partner it is to meet with men, how supportive it is and how empowering it is, and that this polarity is being created, and then we meet from a different place. So conscious life is a very, very wide subject, and if we look at different areas, there are different practices how to be more conscious in sexuality, how to be more conscious in our decision making, how to be more conscious in our work, in our relationship. It's a wide subject. I hope I answered your question.
That's pretty good. I like this idea of treating yourself like another person. It sort of makes sense that if you can be a good lover to yourself, then you can start to expand that to relating to actual other people.
Mm.
I'm very curious about this idea of slowing down, though. That's one of the most common answers I've heard from people in this series is slowing things down. Um, why would you say that's so powerful?
Mm. That's a good question. So I'll give you this picture. Imagine you're driving like I don't know, Porsche or any other very fast car, and it's such a temptation to just really put the your feet closer and to drive really faster and just feel the adrenaline and things happening, and everything here in your belly is really pleasant, and the adrenaline is so pleasant, and then it's exciting, and I love it. And when I'm driving that fast, first of all, it's hard for me to see what is happening around me. Second of all, the only and main thing that I'm feeling is the adrenaline. So it also covers other things. And the third thing is also that it's risky, because if we're driving like that for some time, it's okay. But when we're driving like that all the time, we're getting tired, and movement like that small even can cause a huge accident. Whilst when we slow down, we drive 20 kilometers per hour, this move will not make anything, and we can look around, we can see, we can even wave to someone, we can meet someone, we can just enjoy other things. And I am really in awe when I see what a miracle, what miracle can happen when we are slowing down, when we're allowing ourselves to just speak slower and just allow the silence sometimes, even if it's uncomfortable, just to let it sink in and drop. And for sure, because Ken Wilber entered my life a few years ago, and from that time I can see how important it is for me to balance, because I wouldn't be able to live only slowly. Like, it's not for me. I'm not that type of person. So how for me it's important to have both, to give the kick sometimes, and also it's my temper to just really have a lot of adventures and be risky, and also to slow down sometimes, because this is when I can listen and hear the things I would be never able to hear if I was running very fast. So slowing down is important, to just notice, to just hear myself, listen also to my intuition, to the voices that I cannot hear in the TV or in the radio. So this is why it is important for me, and the same in sexual life. It's exactly same comparison, I would say.
One of the big parts of integral thinking is this notion of people moving through different developmental levels. When you work with people, do you find yourself working with them differently? Do you find people, are sort of have a certain paradigm or context of reality that you tailor yourself to, into like different levels of people? Or do you think everybody sort of comes to you generally the same?
On the surface, it's a huge variety. It's a lot. Underneath, what I am most of the times experiencing is that people need to be listened, people need to be loved, and people need to feel they are not wrong. People need to find the inner trust. And I use different tools when I'm meeting people, whether it's on my concerts or on my individual sessions or workshops or lectures, whatever it is. It's really people from so many different countries, also environments. There can be students that I'm working with, youths, as well as, the president of a very famous corporation. So it's really a huge variety. And I think that the biggest, for me in my work, what is most important is to meet the person where they are at in this moment. And of course, what I'm creating inside of me is important and it does affect other people. But then I really feel to tune into the other person and to really meet them where they are at this moment. Otherwise, it might be just not helpful for them meeting me. So what you were mentioning about the lines of development, of course, and of course, youth from 17-year-old will be coming to me with a different let's say expectations than the president of the corporation. So this is the art to be able to meet them, but I really enjoy the variety. It's really exciting for me.
When people come to you, they're looking for help or they're looking for growth. They want to be there, but what's the hardest thing for them, do you think? Even though they want to be there, what do people find difficult about the process?
It really depends. I think one of the biggest issues are that people are ready for a step, for moving forward or moving on with their lives, but there are around them, there are a lot of factors, or is it family or work or partner or kids or whatever, that is kind of making them not moving. And I can see there is this process when I don't know if you've heard of Vision Quest. Me and James, we do Vision Quest, which is 4 days and 4 nights in the land, alone in the solitude and fasting. And what is important about this process is that it's not only the 4 days. The process begins the moment you're making a decision of doing this process. And this is first phase. Then the second phase is where you're actually on the land. And the third phase is that you went through this huge experience. You said goodbye to the old stuff. You're welcoming the new. And now you have to go back to your default world, to your family, or to whatever you're doing. And you have to integrate it. It's called incorporation, this phase. And this is, we say that this is actually the hardest part. It's not that you cannot eat for 4 days. This is nothing compared to the integration that needs to happen, the adjustment of the whole reality to be able to adjust with your inner process. So people on the sessions or workshops or concerts, when they are in the experience, they are ready, but then how to bring it to their daily life. And this is something that I work with people also a lot, and it's working. It's very good.
So A lot of what you're doing is working with people's attitudes and their psychology and their emotions, and you're deepening their experience of themselves and helping them to incorporate what they find. But what sorts of actual physical practices are you recommending to people or helping them experiment with?
Hmm. Very often, like when we're doing workshops or lectures, then it's like it's all more or less we have a script and we have a set structures that we're using. When I'm working in sessions, it really depends. Normally, I meet the person and after 5 or 10 minutes, I know what is needed just now, and it comes actually from the person. Like very often they don't even realize, but they actually know exactly what they need, and I just listen to them, and then I'm like, this is what you need. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. They don't even realize they already know it. So there are different practices. I do use tantra a lot because the practices are very helpful, and when there are couples that are coming to me for sessions, and most of the times it's about the sexual life, even if on the surface it's about plates not being in the dishwasher or whatever else, we end up in their bedroom always. So like, I mean, as an issue, this is what I mean. So different practices that I take from tantra, I mix them. I work very intuitively. I work integral. I love using the quadrants, and especially when there are people who are having difficulties with making a decision. This is my favorite tool. So obviously, I'm using my voice a lot and seeing very often people coming to me because they want to hear how I'm singing and they want to hear my voice, and I'm doing it, but actually very often it's about them using their voice. So often I use that. It's very complex, and I'm very intuitive when people are coming to me and listening to, as I said, where they are at, what they need, because sometimes people are also obviously maybe more psychologically focused. So then I wouldn't give them shamanic practices because I know that it's not for them. So there needs to be some awareness around that.
Do you find that a lot of people's sexual issues are sort of basic health issues? Like, are they eating right and sleeping right? Are they breathing right? Is their blood circulating in their body adequately? Things like that. Do you pay much attention to their general health?
Oh yes, definitely. And again, going back to integral, for a very long time when I met my partner James, because he introduced me to Ken Wilber. I mean, I knew Ken Wilber, but I hated him. He was too heady for me, and I was just I just couldn't listen to him. So, and at that point I was very anti system, anti conventional methods. I was very conventional medicine was the biggest hell for me and the biggest evil. So I was in very much in the postmodern phase. So what happened within years, and also working with integral and working with James, I started integrating, basically integrating the systems, integrating the conventional methods of healing. And it really also, I can see how I grew from that, and also how it supported me in supporting people to be able to recognize that we're not only that, like that in order to make really conscious decision, we need to have a whole picture. And very often I was excluding something from the picture. So when I'm working with people now, I definitely focus on all the aspects, including mind, body, soul, psychology, energy, past lives if it's needed, fantasies, like whatever aspects, systems that the people are living in, community around them. Like I'm really trying to be very inclusive and to have a whole picture when supporting people.
You mentioned that you worked with hypnosis, and I'm very curious about the relationship between sex and hypnosis because they have some common features. So there's, your consciousness shifts and there's a flow state, and willingness and consent are very important, and saying yes is very important in both of them. Do you think there are some parallels between going into trance and going into sexuality?
Let me check. I see what you mean. So when I'm talking about hypnosis, it's like okay, so the difference would be that when I'm in a hypnosis, in a session, then there is someone who is experiencing the hypnosis and someone who's holding space. So then, of course, there are aspects that you just mentioned that are very similar. So there is consent, there is a huge form, especially in when it's for a woman, it's this quality of surrender, of letting go, of going with the flow. And when it comes to the sexual act, the sexual encounter, then I feel that it is more of the exchange. So it's not necessarily that someone is holding space. It's almost like you're both holding space for each other. And what is the most profound thing about the sacred union of when two people are making love is the mixture of the feminine and the masculine, where not only it is happening in two bodies, but also it's happening inside. So I have both masculine and feminine inside of me activated. So I'm able, as a feminine, I'm able to surrender and to go with the flow, to allow the pleasure, to allow the emotions, the energy to move me, and at the same time not to get lost in it, not to be in contact with the awareness, with someone who is witnessing it, which is the masculine quality. And this is the whole dance. And it can be from my experience, I can say that it can be taught only from practicing it and from really treating it not as a goal to have it perfectly figure out 50-50 or whatever the idea can be, but actually to see that it's an exploration as a goal, that's exploring the feminine and masculine, the dance between them, the polarities, how they are changing inside of me and also outside of me, that this is the goal itself. And this would be the difference for me between the hypnosis, where, as I said, the dynamics are a little bit different. But when we're talking about the state, for sure, and for sure, also what happens during hypnosis can also happen, like we can get the same memories, we can get the same insights from both hypnosis or sexual act. So for sure, they both can be healing, and this is the similarity.
Thank you. The polarization of sexual energy is interesting. You're talking about the willingness to explore our masculine and feminine modes, and that masculine and feminine polarization is a classical part of Tantra. But at the same time, probably many people today would say maybe that's too simple, maybe that's too heterosexual. Does polarization between two forces um, help us to understand the diversity and complexity of sexuality? Should we challenge the idea that there's a masculine and feminine polarity, or do you think that's a very essential idea?
Hmm. Should we challenge? I like challenging, I must say. So, but for sure, I'm not doing it to my clients and to my students. I do recommend it. I do recommend testing. Like, I never say to people, this is how it is. I always say, this is how it is for me, from my experience. Go out if you feel like and check it if it's true for you. So for me personally, it's the essence. It's the essence of living consciously, of living fully, of being able to know myself. So the thing that we were speaking at the beginning, conscious life, how do we start it? We start with exploring ourselves with curiosity and kindness. I always say these two qualities have to be present, even if we're challenging ourselves. Always try to be kind and compassionate. And I wasn't like that in the past. This is how I have learned it. I've learned how important it is. So definitely, from my experience, I can say that it's a profound practice, the polarization, and exploring the masculine and feminine inside of me helped me. It's helpful. It's profound. It's helpful. It's so much fun also, I remember on one of the workshops in the past, we had this practice as women that we were imagining having male genitals, lingams, between our legs. It was one of the most incredible experiences I've had in my life. This idea and this feeling and what I've experienced, like, we don't have it, for you it's obvious, but for me it's not completely. It's like, wow, it was a huge important process and experience. And in also exploring my masculine, and also in feeling, it also supports me in feeling more compassionate towards men, feeling them, feeling their wounds, feeling how hard it is for them also. There is so much focus on the feminine wound and how we are abused and Me Too and everything. And I deeply resonate. I was also in that. And at the same time, there is so much pain also in men. So me exploring my both polarity, like playing in polarities with polarities, is just helping me also to feel more compassionate towards men. So I recommend it, but go and test it for yourself first. Definitely.
I'm curious how you think about sexual energy, or even just sort of the sense of energy in the body, because people
Mhm.
have different opinions. Some people feel it's just there's normal electricity in our bodies and we don't examine it very often.
Mhm.
Some people, like Dr. Wilhelm Reich and also many of the tantra traditions, say there's some other form of energy beyond that that's especially lively. And then a lot of people might just think of it as a useful metaphor that isn't really real. How do you think about energy in the body and sexual energy particularly?
Mm. That's a beautiful question. So, sexual energy is the life force energy, basically. And it's the it's the strongest energy, because this is the energy that can create a human being. This is how we are being created, from this sexual energy that can create life. So, looking at that from this aspect is making us realize not only how powerful it is, how essential it is, but also how it can create anything. If it can create a human being,
Mm.
then why not, you know, um, traveling, or any other dreams that we have. And this is actually, we can go back to the first question that you asked me about magic, because there is a whole area called sex magic where we're using sexual energy to create, to manifest. This is a beautiful form. For some people it is more fun and more playful, but it's for sure there is something very strong behind it. And I do work with it for sure a lot. And uh, I do feel that when I'm very deeply connected with my sexual energy, I can do anything. This is the strength of this energy. So, obviously, when we are playing with ourselves, or where we are playing with our partners in bedroom, this is when we get turned on, and this goes even higher. But there are practices to awaken the life force energy, Kundalini, in your daily life. So then it's like only breathing can make you feel like it's the most pleasurous thing on the planet. And it brings more aliveness, it brings more juiciness to your life, it brings more passion towards life, it brings more joy. And for me it is very helpful, especially when I get triggered or when I get caught being disheartened or disappointed by something that didn't work out. And then my mood is going like that. So I'm catching myself that I'm dependent on something on the outside, and being dependent disconnects me from my life force energy. And when I do the practices to move it inside of me and to generate it, then everything around me doesn't have so much potential for trigger or for hurt for me, because I have it here, I have it inside of me. And I do feel talking about energy is it's a difficult subject for sure, but it's something I feel it's my gift, because I was since I was a child, I was very sensitive for energy, and I was feeling things that people were not feeling. So this is why I was a difficult child. And it's it's um, it's a very delicate subject, but for sure it's a mystery. And if I could say it in one sentence, it's like if you could close your eyes and imagine that from nothing there is this will, what a huge will it has to be, that it starts to materialize, that it starts to be something that we can see, how powerful it has to be, how profound, and how magical. This is why I say also that it's magic. It might sound a little bit fairy airy, but it's a miracle. And this is why when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking this is a miracle. Life is a miracle, and I am a miracle because of this will of this life force energy that created me.
Beautiful. The idea of sex magic is very intriguing. I know that some people experience a buildup of energy and try to use the moment of the orgasm to give their intention to something larger. Is that the kind of thing you mean? And what do you think happens to consciousness at that peak of the sexual experience?
Mm-hmm. Well, first thing I would like to say is that it can be also energetical orgasm. It doesn't have to be physical orgasm, meaning that we can create energetical orgasm just from sitting without even touching ourselves. And this is also possible in creating and manifesting and creating an intention. For sure, the biggest specialist of sex magic for me is Laurie Handlers. I don't know if you heard of her. She's a queen, one of the queens of Tantra. She's incredible. And her workshops about sex magic are masterpiece. So she's for sure an expert. What happens during when we're orgasming is the feeling of oneness. So in many traditions, what we say is that this is our natural state. It's the state of bliss. It's the state of just feeling being a god, feeling connected to God or the source or the cosmos, however people would like to name it. And when we're in that state, there is a sense of limitlessness. Yes,
Yes.
limitlessness, I think. So in this is why we're here, because of this feeling of this limitlessness. We are able to invite into our lives things that we are longing for, because we are in this state, we are free from our masks, from our conditionings, from our all the filters that are in the front of us, the way we see the world, the way we see other people. And especially when there is when it's happening in a couple, because this obviously we can also do it in pairs to manifest and practice sex magic. And then it's even more incredible because it's two people, so it's the intention of two life force energies, and it's incredible. So of course there are different practices, and as I said, it's the connection with God. And this is why we say that in Tantra we take people from sex to super consciousness and to this state of oneness.
Some people think of sex as a desire rather than something that we need. And other people experience it like it is very much a need, that they're, starving if they don't have a certain regular access to that kind of intimacy.
Mhm.
How do you think about it? Do you think it is like a vitamin, like a nutrient that
Mm,
human organisms require?
mm. Beautiful question. What we require is to be in touch with our life force energy. Otherwise, we go into depression. This is for sure what is very important and crucial in terms of being connected to sexual energy. The easiest way to connect to our sexual energy is sex, obviously, because this is what we've heard and this is what we know. We are not being educated. We were not educated. For sure, for me, sex is just one of the tools that we can use to feel connected to our life force energy, to be connected, as I said before, to our passion, to pleasure, to feeling of belonging or of deserving, of juiciness, something. Something that I would call aliveness, aliveness in everything we do, in everything we create. I would say that sexuality and sex, as I said, is just a doorway to something. And in Vigyan Bhairav Tantra, from 120, I think, or 12 meditations, there are only 6 that are about sexual acts. Everything else is about different practices of bringing consciousness to your life and being able to connect to other people in from the place of love rather than fear. So I wouldn't say that sex is something that is like a vitamin. Our vitamin is connection to this life force energy. And my understanding is that the biggest misunderstanding about sex is that when we feel a desire or this energy, even horniness, that we need to do something about it. And it's the same misunderstanding with food, that when we're hungry, we need to eat. It's like, it's the concept and how we've been raised. Also, it's a cultural concept. When there is a problem, we have to resolve it. When you feel horny, you need to get laid. When you're hungry, you need to eat. When you have a headache, you need a pill. So it's a very resolution focused cultural conditioning. Whilst one of the practices that I'm doing with my students would be when I take them, I did it years ago. I suggested going on detox. We're having workshops for a week, and I suggested we spend first 3 days without eating anything. And after 3 days of not eating anything, I asked the kitchen to prepare the most delicious and gorgeous meal that they've ever seen. And I invited everyone to the big table. Everyone had the plate served. And I told them to just meditate now while feeling the smell, looking at this deliciousness, and really meditate with the hunger. Really meditate with the feeling of desire, of longing, of sensations in your body, of the thoughts that are happening there, of the desire to grab it and to just, put it all in your face. And they were shocked. They just couldn't believe me. And after we did the practice, they were even more shocked because none of them wanted to eat it afterwards, after we finished. And that shows that sometimes the most obvious resolution might not be the best resolution. That sometimes when we're hungry, that it may be not about eating. It might be about something else. And it's the same with sex. Sometimes when we're horny, it might be not necessarily about grabbing and going to have sex or going into self-pleasuring. So I adore working with, especially with this energies that are like, I have to do something, because this is where magic happens. This is where we get the biggest gifts from these practices.
It's another good reason to slow down so that you have those options at those moments.
True.
When people come together in intimacy, do you think of that as being mostly the two of them sharing, or do you think of it as a third kind of entity so emerging? Is there another person in sexuality?
I love this question. I did have these experiences where I felt that there is some third entity, or and then it was even hard to say if it's a third entity, or if it's like us creating this kind of melting where you get actually confused who is who, and this is what I'm saying about the super consciousness in the sexual act. When we slow down, when we are not focused on the goal, but we're focused on the pleasure itself, on the connection itself. One of the most beautiful practices is to actually plug in or start sexual meeting when we're not horny, when lingam is not in erection, when yoni is not wet, and it's like, what happens then? And this element of curiosity is being built up once we slow down. We start to explore rather than we're getting to get something and achieve something, and then it just becomes an incredible journey where we can suddenly have visions. We can see these, that there is a third entity maybe, and it's almost like, it's obviously easy to get lost in it, but once there is awareness, the masculine quality, then you stay really grounded and you're able to look at it with curiosity, like, wow, what happened? And then you're more like exploring rather than you're putting life in a box. Okay, this is what happens, this is the entity and it's actually a god and he's standing there and looking at it. It's like, it's really not so easy to put things in the box when you're inviting this quality of curiosity. And one of the things that I thought that you're going to ask about intimacy, it's that we very often think that intimacy is that, like, it's very intimate to get naked and to go to bed together, whilst also when we look from integral perspective, it's like, how can we get naked in all the quadrants, how can we be naked not only physically but also about what is happening inside, about our relation and our encounter? How can we be naked about our expectations, about what this relationship is about, or what this encounter is about? How can we be, it's like being naked in all the four quadrants, in all the areas, not only physically. This is what creates this incredible intimacy, and this also forces us to slow down.
That's a great concept of being naked in all the quadrants. I like that.
Being intimate in the all. This is what makes integral more sexy.
It seems like there's a lot of things to consider in terms of educating children about sexuality. You don't, right? Some things might be problematic if they're introduced too early. On the other hand, maybe it's too late if you just wait to be asked by a child. There's things people need to know about their bodies and about how to relate to energy and pleasure and how to avoid traumas and things like that. What's your general impression of a healthy sexual education for children?
Mm. Yes, this is my dream, and I'm actually doing it. I'm teaching and giving lectures to youth, and also recently I was invited to have sex education for 12-year-olds. So it's really, people are more and more open to do that, and I'm so excited about that. I have a dream. I have the whole plan or idea how this could go. I don't want to say should go, but could go. Still being very aware of conditioning that is happening from the moment we are conceived. Actually, this is the moment when the conditioning starts, because it starts with the way we are being conceived. And then I don't know if you knew that, because there is so much, I put a lot of attention around boundaries is the first thing that I'm working on with youths and with kids, because I feel it's the subject that should be like between maths and geography. And the second thing is obviously the biggest subject, which is masturbation. And the whole misunderstanding is because children don't know anything about it. They also don't know how to do it, what to do with it, so they do it intuitively. And I was once, I think I was accused, one of the parents, after a lecture for teenagers actually. And I remember that there was this boy who was asking, he was the one who was asking most of the questions. Like, he was very active during this lecture, and most of them were around masturbation. And then afterwards I got an email from the organizer that there is this email with a complaint that one of the boys, he didn't even know what masturbation was, and that because I brought this subject, he started to masturbate. And then I intuitively asked which boy, like what is the name of the boy, and obviously it was the boy who was asking me most of the questions. And of course he knew about masturbation. Of course he was already masturbating. And I honestly told them, like, I didn't tell them that he was asking most of the questions, but I told them, listen, if your son is 16 and he's not masturbating, he's either lying to you or he needs support. Because it's like sexual energy is just such a natural thing. And if we're not doing it, we're suppressing it. And then obviously we need support. Maybe some children started a little bit later, some sooner, but still it's such a important part of our lives. And then they told me that for sure their son never masturbated, and that children don't masturbate. Basically, this was their idea. And then I told them, I sent them the research that I've read about, and it's public, that actually, I don't know, maybe you knew about it. Do you know when actually we start masturbate for the very first time? What age, more or less?
I would guess it's quite early, but I'm not sure. I haven't
Let's
seen.
put how many years old?
I guess it would depend on what we count as masturbation, but I would think that like very early, like in, at 2 or 3 or 4 or something, people are touching parts of their body and experiencing some pleasure, even though the full system isn't necessarily operating.
Yeah. Yeah. So from the researches, they proved that the first touch of genitals and creating pleasure happens in mommy's belly.
Ah, that's a little earlier than I thought. That's interesting.
Yes. And like, it's been videoed how actually little babies in the belly are touching their genitals, and how boys are having erection already. So it's really such a natural thing, it shows how natural it is. And once we get out of the belly, and obviously we are conditioned from everything that is in our environment. So that would be our parents, that would be school or preschool, or so many other factors. But for sure, masturbation is a huge subject, and it's a huge problem also for parents, because I also get parents coming to me what to do about their teenager who is just masturbating 10 times a day in the bathroom, and that they cannot use the bathroom and so forth. So it's a very big subject, and this is also one of the areas that I could speak about for a long time, so stop me. And but this is part of the program that I would like to bring. And the main focus around masturbation is how to distinguish masturbation from self-pleasuring, and how to start teaching children how they can actually start being in contact with the pleasure itself. And
So what is the main distinction between those two?
there are a few distinctions. First one, I would say, is the purpose. So self-pleasure would be being more focused on giving yourself a pleasure without getting, to the peak orgasm, which especially for men is very depleting. I think it takes around 20 days to recover from that, and that influences their mood, and it has an impact on that. So I'm not saying that it's not good to do it. There are some traditions that are encouraging not to have ejaculation at all. I would say, like, just check with your body. This is what I recommend to men that are asking me, just to do a test, like for 30 days, don't ejaculate, and see what happens. And maybe there can be some kind of system that you can create for yourself individually based on how you feel. It's the same with a diet. Not every diet is for everyone. So self-pleasuring would be more focusing on the pleasure. And one of the practices to actually start incorporating it to our lives is to give yourself pleasure until this moment where you almost come, and then slow down, and then do it a few times. So obviously it will be difficult for boys, but for teenagers, I know teenagers that started working. It's a very profound tantric practice, and they are shocked because also they get more pleasure. It's also a practice that leads to full body orgasms, and it's a whole journey. So this is one of the things that's one of the distinctions between masturbation and self-pleasuring. Also the tempo, the timing. It's like when I was masturbating as a girl, I would be just taking every opportunity. Like even if I had 3 minutes, then okay, I have 3 minutes, and just to get there and be very fast because someone might come in. Whilst for self-pleasuring, I give myself 2 hours, and I just play with myself, and I just explore the pleasure for as much time as I give to myself. The third distinction would be that masturbation is focused on one part of your body, which is genitals, whilst especially for women, there are at least 20 other places in your body that you could have orgasm from. So it's also being very curious about your whole body, not only about genitals. So I would say these are three main distinctions. There are more, but
Well, no, that's terrific. I like
more.
those, and they remind me how little focus our current education system has about pleasure in general. Like we don't receive much training in how to have a good time in any part of our life.
That's very true. Yes.
Now, the other thing you mentioned relative to child sexual education was boundaries. What's your general approach to teaching kids about boundaries?
I call it the kindergarten of sexual education. It's the boundaries. It's very often the kids. I'm entering the hall or the workshop space, and they're like, "Okay, so we're gonna have some juicy stuff here and talking about sexual things." And I'm starting. Okay, now we're gonna do a practice on boundaries, and then they're like, "What?" And actually, this is the main thing. And I repeat it, and I practice with them, and I show them how important it is until they really get it. And then I can move on with them, because this is where it all starts. With recognizing our boundaries, we are able to fully meet life. If we're able to fully meet life, fully meet ourselves, fully know ourselves also thanks to boundaries, then we can meet the other person. We are not able to set the boundaries if we don't know our boundaries, and most of us don't, because the first thing that happens when we are being alive, when we are being born, is our boundaries are being crossed because there are some people who are taking us on their hands, giving to our mom, or not, very often not. And this is the first time where we're actually things are happening that we don't actually like. We are being touched by people that we don't like, and so forth. So most of the sexual problems are based in the boundaries and in the traumas around boundaries. And this is why I started, like, by kind of prevention of like how all the boundaries that's been already crossed for you, how you can prevent it in future as a teenager, and not as a 40-year-old who realized that, you know, you've been crossed like thousands of times, you know, and you're re-traumatized thousands of times. So that's the basic for me, and that's the basic of sex education. And it also is very helpful in our daily lives, you know. And it's incredible what they get, because they don't realize that when a math teacher is like kind of hanging, like, I don't know how to say it, like when they are writing something and the teacher comes really close, and they are getting into fight or flight because they don't like it, but they don't even know what's happening to them. They just say, oh my God, I felt like I'm frozen. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, but he was too close and it felt disgusting. And I didn't even realize, you know, and they are recognizing it. It starts from such a simple situations that we start to recognize where our boundaries are. And because we don't recognize them, we start ignoring the impulses from our body, because our body will always tell us what's not okay. But because I don't know, how you had your childhood, but for me it was many times that I was forced to kiss my uncle on a good morning as a child, like, say hello to your uncle, give him a kiss. And it was, for me, it was crossing my boundaries, and my body was telling me, but my most beloved people around me were telling me that this is not right, that I have to kiss him, this is what's right. So I conditioned myself, when this thing happens in your body, don't listen. And here we are, 20 years later. I'm just not listening. So it's a basic. And
So one of the ways then to learn more about our boundaries is to think about when we've had those feelings, and what might have crossed that boundary that caused us to have those feelings, and to value those feelings. What other sorts of practices do you do with people to help them learn what their boundaries are?
So it depends. Most of them are embodiment practices. So I love doing it in workshop space, or even if it's even if it's a lecture, and it's, you know, 200 people, I still try to make it happen that they can actually feel it, not only talking. Because of COVID, I had to learn how to do it online. So I'm doing it. And there are different things. It starts from writing on the paper. How does it feel for you when you're being when your boundaries are being crossed, or drawing where your boundaries are? It starts from really simple thing of just self-recognition, of just really asking yourself what I said at the beginning. Just ask yourself, where do you like to be touched, where you don't like, how you like to be touched. And I'm not talking about sexual touch, I'm just talking even, you know, about caressing. Some people would rather be caressed more like that way. Some people would rather feather touch. Some people don't like being touched in their hair. Other people love being touched in their hair. Like, it's, we are such a different alive beings, and it might be different for me tomorrow, and it might be different on Sunday, you know? So it's like, again, keep calling yourself, keep making these phone calls, and keep asking yourself. And then from that, we get in touch with this feeling inside of us that is this very subtle signal. This is not okay. It's like a yellow light, you know? Be careful, something is not right. But most of us have it on silence, like the phone calls you have on silence. The same with our signals from our body. It's on silence, and we need to really slow down to hear it.
Well, let's say we're almost done. Is there anything else in general you'd like to say on this topic, or anything that's been in the back of your mind through these questions?
Um, I think I would like to ask you, actually. I would like to ask you, like, what did you take from this meeting? What was something that was for you, had a, yeah, benefits of this conversation?
I I really appreciate your general ideas around child education, and so the emphasizing masturbation, pleasure, and boundary recognition. Those are some things that I'm definitely going to think about some more after this.
Hmm.
I think also my interest in sex magic may have been reawakened. It's not something I've thought about for a while, but it is something that's endlessly interesting. And
Hmm.
maybe now it's time for me to pay attention to it again.
Hmm. Wow. So I'm really happy that you got that for yourself. I definitely would like to add one thing on the topic for the youths. It's also about acknowledging their exploration, acknowledging their desires. So there are phases, of course, pornography, being interested in the same gender. There are different phases, and really setting this mode from the very beginning of exploration is very helpful thing. And then really seeing as a parent where actually your judgments, you're putting them on your child. So it's like, if you have an idea that pornography is bad, like being aware how we are giving this information to our kids, because what I realized also in terms of sexuality, but also other things, I don't know if you've heard about nonviolence communication by Rosenberg. He says that underneath every desire, there is a need. And we can, sometimes we choose a strategy because we don't realize there are different strategies for this need, because we don't know what the need is. So very often children are using pornography for the need of this ecstatic, or this excitement inside and horniness. And especially for girls, like I remember I was interested in pornography because at some point I didn't want to touch myself. I just wanted to see how people are doing it. And then if I get in touch with this need, then I can choose, and this is what I recommend, and I did it with my children also when they started to be interested in pornography: erotic movies, or movies where there is sexuality, but it's shown in a beautiful way. My favorite erotic movie was Dirty Dancing, where there was so much erotism and this juiciness that I didn't need anything else, just this energy was enough for me. And once we are able to meet this, to see, explore what this need is, then we can choose a different strategy, not necessarily the pornography that is really harshly shown what sex is. And the same with other ideas of youths, because they have a lot of weird ideas. And I will make a circle and finish with, again, curiosity, kindness, exploration, and compassion. Like, if
Beautiful.
we're able to bring that, then it makes things much easier for sure.
All right. And the youths have a lot of weird ideas. That's gonna be my takeaway from this.
I don't want to judge it, maybe weird not, but maybe let's say um, very eccentric, or very
Peculiar and surprising.
surprising. Oh, maybe let's call it surprising, not weird because it sounds like a judgment. So it's surprising ideas. And it's linked with creativity. So we cannot cut it just like that by our judgments, because we also cut the creativity for life, which is another subject about sexual energy, that it's linked to our creativity. So that's for another conversation.
Maybe we'll have another conversation. Thank you very much. This has been lovely.
I've been delighted. Thank you for your invitation, and thank you for listening and receiving me.